Welcome everyone to the Preparing for Summer Success webinar. That's part of our Beyond the Bell webinar series, and this one is getting an early start on planning your summer programming. This is Jamie Singer from the American Institutes for Research. With me here today is Laura Shankland. You'll be hearing mostly from Laura today, and I just will provide a quick introduction before I turn it over to her. So before I do turn it over, I wanted to give a little bit of explanation about our webinar series that we're doing. You can see on this slide that we have some information up here about our Beyond the Bell suite of professional development services and products. And this webinar series is part of that. We're offering webinars every other month throughout the year. This is the fourth in the series, and we're really excited to have you on with us today. Each of the webinars that we're doing does feature one of the 96 tools in the toolkit. And the tool that we featured today will be available for free download from our website, which is www.beyondthebell.org. And you don't have to worry about capturing that website down. I'll put all the websites that I mentioned during this intro in the chat. And I'll also send them out to you afterwards via the Eventbrite registration. So don't worry about having to capture that. So the tool today will be featured on the webinar for free download until the next webinar that we host in March. And we are recording this webinar today. We've recorded all of the previous webinars as well. They're posted on the Beyond the Bell YouTube channel. So I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. So if you missed one of the previous webinars, you can go have a listen to those. We had one on youth development was our first one, and then staff development, and then our third one was on social and emotional learning and out of school time programming. So those are all available for download, and then we will be uploading this webinar as well to the YouTube channel. We'll also be sending out a survey after the webinar, so we would love to have your feedback about what went well, what you would like to see improved. We are offering 2 more webinars as part of this series that will go through June. So we're always looking to improve. We would love to hear from you. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Laura, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat if anyone has questions. And I'll also be putting those websites that I mentioned into the chat. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jamie. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending upon the time zone you're in. And I'm really glad that you could join us this afternoon. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart because I have run a summer learning program, so I'm excited to have everyone here. And I do want to stress what Jamie said. We do have the chat box active here, and I also do want to let folks know if you are just logging on, you may have joined unmuted, so just to be mindful of background noise or to make sure you mute your phone or microphone. And I do want to encourage people to type your questions and comments into the chat box. Jamie will be keeping up with that and letting me know what questions you have, or chime in with comments. The more you add to this, the more of an interactive discussion we can have. So what we're going to talk about for the next 27 minutes by my clock is understanding the importance of summer learning and why we are here, and then also to talk about the key components of planning a summer learning program. I do want to stress that this is going to be an overview. It is a short webinar, so we're going to be giving you that high-level view of things you want to be doing, steering you towards some resources, and getting you thinking about what you can do to be ready for starting your summer program when it comes. So a little bit about me. This is not me in the picture. This is an expanded learning program that we work with. But I do a lot of after-school work at AIR and a lot of technical assistance, workshops, things like that. And expanded learning is one of my favorite fields. I also, in a prior life, worked as a 5th grade teacher, and I ran a summer learning program when I was a teacher. It was a summer learning program for English language learners, and I was hired just a few weeks before the program began. They did have the facilities in place and a couple staff people hired, and they were working on recruiting students, but I'm going to be honest and say when I took over as director, I did not feel as prepared as I wanted to. I think we ran a great program. Students learned a lot, had fun. I'm proud of it. But I would also say, looking back, you know, I think I spent most of that summer just trying to stay out in front of what was coming the next week and keep my head above water. And, you know, thinking that, wow, if I would have had more time to plan and think about it, that great program would have been even better. So that is why I'm talking to you about summer learning now, is to get you thinking about that. So I'd like to hear from folks who are on. If you can type into the chat box, I'd like to hear a little bit more about where you are with planning a summer learning program. And you can type either the number or you can type a couple words. But I'd like to know, number one being you've planned and you've led a program before and are looking to improve. Or maybe this is your first time leading a summer program, but you have done some planning. Or number three, you're just getting started. And I'm seeing a couple ones, so good. We have some seasoned people. I hope you guys will chime in and share your experience and your expertise as well. And also some people who are getting started. So that's great to see. Well, please feel free to share your experience and your resources as we go through this. And no matter where you are in the planning process, we are glad to have you here and hope we can give you some good ideas. So just to stress the point, and I think you have gotten this, if you are here on this webinar, is I know it seems like summer is months and months away, but it's going to come quick, and we want to get you guys started planning now so that you will be ready when it's time to start your summer programming. And before we talk about those steps that we want you to take, there are a few things that I want you to think about. And some of you, if you've worked in summer learning, probably know some of these. But I also would like to hear from folks. Type in the chat box. Are folks familiar with the summer learning loss and what that is? You type yes or no, and I'll talk a little bit about it. So what we know from research is that students lose ground over the summer. They're out of school for about 2.5 weeks, and they lose ground academically. And this is not just students who are struggling academically, this is all students. In fact, we have some research that shows us that most students lose 2 months of math over the summer. It's not quite as much with reading, but it's a lot of catch up for teachers to do when they come back in the fall. And this is particularly pervasive among students from low-income families because they don't have all the opportunities to participate in those learning events, those camps, those trips to the library, all those things that help them maintain that learning, keep those skills over the summer so they're ready to go in the fall. And as students progress through school, this gap, this summer learning loss continues to progress and they can fall farther behind. And the summer learning loss has actually been found to be a significant reason for students dropping out of school. But it's not just about falling behind academically. If you have students who receive healthy meals through free and reduced price lunch, they're going to lose that service during the summer. So you might have students who were doing okay nutritionally who are going to suddenly experience food scarcity, and they're going to be affected that way. And there's also safety considerations. Students who may not have a safe place to go, a community, caring and trustworthy adults to be with, all of those factors that help them grow up to be well-rounded adults. The good news with all this is high quality summer programs can make a difference, that you really can make a difference in students' lives, helping to close that learning gap, but also just giving them fun learning experiences that they can participate in. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that we can do. And again, I want to stress that this is going to be the 10,000-foot view. And the other thing that I want to talk about as we're going through these steps is these are not necessarily sequential things that you're going to want to do. You don't need to finish one before you start the other. In fact, they may be iterative, so you might be going back through and looping back. They are things that I do want you to keep top of mind as you start planning your summer learning program. So the first thing I do want you to start thinking about is identifying your stakeholders. And what do we mean by that? Basically, anyone who is going to be affected by your summer learning program. So the first thing that comes to mind usually is students and staff, but there's going to be a lot more. You're going to kind of sit there and brainstorm your other groups. It could be school staff, and that's even if you're at a community-based organization. School staff are still your stakeholders. Your parents, your community partners, your advisory board members, your volunteers, anybody else you might be working with. Some other things you're going to want to take a look at then is identifying your assets and your needs, or a less fancy way of saying it is your strengths, resources, and then some of the challenges. Your assets are going to be things like, the staff you have, maybe strong community relationships, funding streams, even equipment, things like that. And that stakeholder group that we talked about, they can help you generate your list of assets and think about what it is you're going to be bringing to the table for your summer program. And then you're going to want to think of the needs that you're going to be addressing. And this is where data is going to come in. Clearly, one of them is going to be student data. That's getting information on attendance during school, behavior, how are they doing academically. Not just that data, but also getting student input, finding out what their interests are. And students are often really good resources too to find out like what they think they need to work on, whether it's academic or whether it's social emotional. School staff can give you input. If you're at a community-based organization, they can also give you input on some of the needs and challenges both for the students and the program. And then also talking to your summer learning staff, and if you have an after-school program, you can also talk to staff from the after-school program and get a sense of what's working for your students, what isn't, and what are some areas where they could use some support. And I'm curious to hear from our participants, if you could type into the chat box, how many of you guys are also running or working in some way with an after-school program as well, so that this is a year-round endeavor for you? And how many folks are just going to be doing the summer learning component? 27 programs, so we've got some year-round people, I see. Okay, so yeah, you've got some ways to connect all these things. And there's lots of strengths for that, but there's also some really amazing opportunities to do some fun things in after school. Okay, and I do see one person who only does summer. So good, we've got a good mix. So back to some of our steps here after we've talked about our stakeholders and after we've done our needs assessment in terms of strengths and resources, we want to set some program goals. And hopefully folks are familiar with SMART goals, but I'll rattle that off quickly. We want to make sure our goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And I will say, if you do operate an after-school program, really take your summer learning program as an opportunity to set some new goals. You probably do have program goals, but as you're winding out of this school year, think about what are some things you want to do that are unique to the summer, where are some areas that your students need support, and make sure you set some specific goals for your summer program. And if you're just doing the summer program, then yeah, you definitely want to lay this out and figure out where do you want to be at the end of the summer? What do you want your students to accomplish? What do you want your staff to accomplish? What do you want to do for the community? All of those different pieces to make sure that you have a successful program and that you can communicate to those stakeholders, including your funders, that you have had a successful program. Because as we know, that's how we want good outcomes for our students, and we also want to continue offering those programs. And of course, we have the beloved logistics, figuring out all of the details of our after-school program. This, of course, is going to be figured out by our goals, or defined by our goals and our resources. But you're going to start hashing out your schedule, figuring out the staff that you need to hire, hopefully get a sense of your budget. If you haven't had that conversation, then talk to your budget people to find out what that is. Making sure you have access to facilities, that you're not going to be using the gym the same time some summer athletic camp is, and what other resources you need. And again, this is back, I know it's January, but it happens quickly, and those resources can often be reserved quickly. So we want to make sure we're able to provide the best opportunities and the best resources for our students. So start mapping that out, and you'll be revisiting it several times over the course of the spring. And of course, we need to start planning our summer learning activities. This picture here is from a 21st CCLC program that I've done some work with. And this is from a theater program that they did with a local arts organization. So one example about how community partners can be a great resource. And as you can see from the picture, they did The Wizard of Oz. And one of the great things I like about this story is, you know, they did it, they thought it would be fun, it would be theater, it would be something different for the students to do. These were also students who were struggling academically. You know, that's why they were recruited to the program. And these students who really weren't scoring very well in reading started showing increased fluency in literacy, started showing improved reading skills, were memorizing lines because they found a different way to engage and to be successful. And it was fun, and yeah, it was a win all around, and they got some great feedback from some of the school staff on this. And my point of this story is not to tell everyone to do a summer theater program, but to start thinking of different ways that you can work on some of those skills and use the advantage of summer learning or expanded learning to help students learn and be successful in different ways. And it's also an example and a reminder that you don't have to do all of this yourself. To start finding those community partners who are looking for schools or expanded learning programs to work with, and really come up with ways to get your students to learn in different ways and start mapping some of those things out. This also brings us to the tool that I want to share with you. We've got the fun, exciting picture on the previous slide, and this one is more the brass tacks and how do we map it out. But you really do need to get all of your stakeholders on the same page. So the tool that we're sharing with you is tool 42, which is the summer program schedule. Something I wish I would have used when I was, or used in greater detail when I was running my summer learning program, but just a way to plan everything out. And it just has you list your theme for the week, the time, the activities you're going to do, the location, the staff involved. And so it lets everyone know what's expected of them and helps everyone stay on the same page. And you can map this to the goals you have, your student needs, your resources, all of those things to make sure that it all comes together. This tool that we have has this example. You probably can't read the font on the screen, but they do have one to show you kind of how it can be filled in. And then we do have a blank one that you can fill out and reproduce for your team so that you guys can be working together and hopefully avoid some of the confusion that can go with summer learning programs. And of course, one of the other things you want to be thinking about is recruiting students, because you can have the best team and the best activities, but if nobody shows up, it's not going to be much of a summer learning program. And again, I'm going to say start early. At the very least, you know, those of you who have your after school programs going, you can put the word out to parents now that there's going to be summer opportunities. And then once you know the details, can start advertising that. If you are just doing a summer learning program, start working with the school or the community-based organization where you will be hosting this program to be promoting it, and use their newsletter, their website, all of those things to get the word out so that those parents don't sign their kids up for other camps or other opportunities, because they'll probably be thrilled to know that they've got this summer learning program their students can be in. But the trick is to get started advertising as early as possible. One of the other things we want to think about while we're doing this is maintaining quality. And some of that data we talked about earlier is going to figure back into this, or what kind of data you're going to collect for your after school program, because we want to make sure we're planning for continuous improvement. So as you start planning your program, start thinking of what data you're going to be collecting. Those of you who have to do a program evaluation, perhaps know some of the data you'll be collecting. If you're just starting and you don't have any of this in place, this is a good time to start mapping that out. Some of the basics are student attendance at your after school program. You would probably want to get some information about their behavior, if there's behavior reports or anything like that. Finding a different way to track their academic achievement and their social and emotional progress. All of those things. I do know some after-school programs do pre and post tests as well. You might want to consider doing surveys. If you've got older students, you can do surveys for them, for parents, things like that. Lots of ways to get input on how your your program's doing. One of the other things you want to keep in mind is that not to wait until the end of the summer to look at this, to be doing your checks along throughout the summer to make sure, are you on track? Are you making progress towards your goals? And is there something that you need to adjust? Because it's 2.5 months is a long time, or however long your program is, it might be shorter. But you want to be able to correct course and refine so that you can have the best program that you can possibly offer. Some of the other things and resources I want to talk about are considerations for programming. Jamie talked a little bit about the archive we have in the YouTube channel. And there's some other ways you can improve the quality of your program. We talk a lot about academics and summer learning, especially with the summer learning loss, but there are a lot of other things that can contribute to students doing well. Some of this is social and emotional learning, and we've got a webinar on that. So if that is something you want to focus on, you can explore that. The other one is positive youth development, really leveraging those student strengths, engaging them with their communities, their schools, their organizations, and helping them develop relationships and leadership skills so that they can thrive. If that's an area that you want to work on with your team or infuse that more into your program, I would encourage you to go to the Beyond the Bell archive and check these webinars out, or possibly watch them with your team so you guys can get more of an understanding. Another thing that you probably want to explore is staff development. I talked earlier about recruiting your staff, but we also want to make sure that they are prepared to do their job. Now, in an ideal world, you will have your staff on board ahead of time and you'll have an orientation and get everyone on the same page and ready to go, but it doesn't always work that way. That said, you can still offer staff development throughout the summer, and there's lots of fast ways you can do it. You just want to make sure that you do have it aligned with your team's needs. So this webinar has some information on assessing staff needs, planning staff development, and making sure that you help your team feel like they are prepared to do the best job possible. And that is my long list of steps for getting ready for summer learning. I would like to hear from some of our seasoned people. Is there anything else that you have learned from your time in planning summer learning programs that you would want to add to this? And you can either unmute and chime in, or you can type things into the chat box if you want to share your lessons learned out. And I'll sing my hold music. Okay, behavior and developmental diagnosis. Yep, getting to know our students' behavioral needs. Like I said, we talk a lot about academics, but there's those other key points. Anybody else have some other things that they like to get in place for their program? Well, I'm going to go over some of our resources. Oh, I do see a couple here, so I'll read those off before I move on. Yeah, community resources, absolutely. Use your community partners, 4-H programs, Girl Scouts, and yes, I see always have a plan B. And I see that working with middle school or adaptive, or middle school students. And then, yeah, inclusive or adaptive needs. So lots of things to think about with this. Any insight about behavior? And Norita, I'm reading your comment about behavior, learning disabilities, and diagnosis. I think what I want to say, and I'm not sure if this is answering your question, is as much as possible, I think that's where working with your school is going to come in, so that you can learn about your students' needs coming into the program, and different ways you can work with them. And if the schools you support have a special ed teacher or someone like that, making sure that what you're offering in the summer is aligned, not just academically, but also just in terms of what the routine is and what the supports are, so you have continuity for the students. So making sure that your team is informed as possible. Because one of the challenges we can have both with after school and with summer learning is sometimes, we have our students and it takes a few weeks for us to really get to know their needs. And if we're in a summer learning program, the summer might be half over before before we really understand what's going on and are ready to address it. So what I would say is, as much as possible, is try to learn about your students ahead of time. Also talking to their parents, they can be a great resource for letting you know what their students' needs are and what strategies work. Some of this will depend upon whether it's a behavioral issue or if it's academic, but trying to get a jump start on it. And if it's a new student, then it is going to be a little trickier, but lining up some of those experts ahead of time so that you're ready to kind of get that information and deploy it and hopefully have some consistency. Because when students face challenges like that, it can be even trickier for them to try and get a routine in. So the more we can have some consistency and help them know what is expected helps. And that having communication, okay, with the school so they can share that as well. Any other questions or comments before I share out our resources? Okay, I just want to show these here so folks can see it. These are some of the references here that informed our work, and you will see them in the archive as well. And this is not just so that you see our citations, but I do want you to encourage you to explore these more, because they've got some great information and some great tools that you can use as you plan your summer program. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie so that she can close us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. And thanks everyone for your participation in the chat. I know with these short webinars, they are not designed to be super interactive. So we appreciate you hanging in there with us. And we would love to hear from you afterward. You can see our information up here, both phone numbers, email addresses, and how to get our attention on Twitter as well. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will be sending out a survey afterward. We'd love your feedback and your thoughts on what went well and what could be improved with this webinar. And please do check our website for the featured tool. It is not uploaded just yet. The one from the last webinar is still up there. So if you scramble and go quickly, you can get that tool as well. And then the tool that Laura featured, the summer schedule, will be uploaded within the next day. This recording will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel within the next day. And I'll send all of those links and that information out in a follow-up Eventbrite message. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Laura, thank you for the great information, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.